Happy to be here. I am currently located in Crozier, Virginia, so just kind of right in between Richmond and Charlottesville. We are just back from Aiken. Spent the winter in Aiken with about 10 horses, and I kind of fluctuate between 10 and 12 horses here in Virginia, and we have a great facility here that we work out of with. It's great. There's some terrain and lots of hacking around, and it's kind of like we're lucky in the fact that it's like a little we're on top of this big hill, so we get to look over all 30 acres, which is really nice. And I have my own competition horses here. So I have 3 competition horses that I have, and then a couple sale horses and students horses, and everything kind of from fox hunters to 3-star horses to young horses, to people going learning to event, to people getting ready for their first advanced. So we have a little bit of everything here, which is awesome. It keeps everyone on their toes, mainly me, and it is all inclusive, like a little bit different than like Cabo, but all inclusive. So
if it was like Cabo, I'd be like, so where in Virginia? I'm gonna just.
I know, right? I know. Yeah, me too. There's no one that's gonna hand you a cocktail when you get off, but I wouldn't be opposed to hanging out at the end of the day.
That could be a really successful business model if you built that in
Can
to
you
like the
imagine?
cocktail.
Yeah. Be like, so you can pay this much for training and board and this much for resort activities.
I think you're onto something there. I think you are. I live in Ocala now, and I can just imagine this whole subset of people that would be like, yes.
I know. It'd be super fun. But yeah, okay, I love it. We love it here. So it's we're really excited to be here. We've been here for about a year, and just kind of continuing to grow and improve, and that's the goals.
So you've got 30 acres, you said?
Yeah, and it's a lot. It's awesome because my husband and I live here on the farm as well. So last night there were horses making noise in the barn, and he got up and gave him hay, which was really nice. I was like, oh, that's great. I don't have to do that. But yeah, so we're here as well, and it's a great facility because we have a little guest apartment. So for people that kind of come in for short-term stays and things like that. So it's all we're really excited to be here.
Yeah. So how many horses roughly do you have like at one time?
Yeah, we have about on average about 10, which is nice because then for me that's a good number. Well, here 10 full time, and then we have a few that kind of ship in periodically. Like I've got students. I'm lucky enough to have students everywhere. So from Ohio to Maine to Florida. So it's nice when they kind of people stop in and train for a week or two and then head on their way. But at between kind of 10 and 12 allows me to stay focused to kind of what each horse needs individually, and also like be very, very hands-on, which as a minor detail oriented person, that helps me out a lot. So I really enjoy doing that. And as my students, a lot of my students would probably disagree with the fact that I was minorly detail oriented. So so yeah, that number kind of allows me to stay focused on everything from their skin condition and their farrier schedule and kind of what's going on with everything on them, to their training and their nutrition management and kind of everything. So that seems to be my niche.
Yeah. So how many? I'm going to derail from our current topic. So you've got 2.
Yeah, go for it.
You've got 2 of your own horses right now, or do you have more than 2? I know you have the gray horse and the bay horse.
Yeah, so I have Quicksilver, Grons, who and Charlie, and those two I own in partnership with a lady in Australia named Lisa Oakley, and I met her when I was riding and competing over there for a number of years, and actually she's my insurance agent, and so she uh, basically when I left Australia, she kind of wanted to stay involved and give me a leg up, and she has been super supportive. And so she owns those two with me. And then I have Global Halcyon, who is owned by the AFG Syndicate, who is she was formerly ridden by Annie Goodwin, and who is a very, very, very good friend of mine that passed away about 3 years ago now in a riding accident. So I ride her for Annie and in Annie's memory. And I am a part of that syndication with Putter Goodwin, her Annie's dad, and Kyle Register, who was one of Annie's owners.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I've seen that horse too. I forgot about that one. But yeah, that's a nice horse.
She's amazing. She keeps me on my toes, but she's very special in many ways.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, to our topic. I have some questions, and we have some people that had some questions. So
nice.
Let's see. So you talked a lot about like your medications and what you keep on hand, and rightfully said, like, check with your veterinarian first, obviously.
Yeah.
Good caveat. So my question was, how do you organize them in your space? Like, do you have a cabinet? Do you have like walk us through what your organization of all this stuff looks like?
I love organization. So basically I have like two setups. So I have in my barn, my whole thing kind of when you walk into my barn is that if for some reason something happens to where something happens at an event, or like I'm not able to get back to the farm, or if any person that is horse competent walks into my barn, they're able to take care of the horses. So that kind of goes from making sure the feed chart's updated, to making sure the stalls are labeled, to making sure that there's a paddock chart, or that that's labeled, to making sure that every medication is labeled, even to how like I have a coffee grinder for two coffee grinders for medications for horses that can go in their feed, and one is labeled for drugs that that are illegal for competition purposes, and then one is labeled for drugs that are legal for competition purposes. So basically, like, that's the biggest component as far as organization goes, is that you have to fully kind of understand what you have on hand and in what category it goes in, as far as being IV medication, IM medication, the dosage for daily feeding. Say you're say a horse has some skin funk and you're giving SMZs, like, it needs to be written on the bottle, kind of your daily dosage, or like what a normal dose would be, or it needs to be written out on a piece of paper, which I'll print out and laminate, and put it on the inside of the cabinet. So just your standard stuff, and and obviously, again, check with your veterinarian, but your standard issue, SMZ dosage twice a day for 10 days, or a standard Banamine dose, or the rules for bute for competition, leading up to a competition, as far as being able to be tested, things that are like definitely not FEI legal, things that are FEI legal, things like that. I usually have it all printed out or written down, or written on the bottle. I think it's really important that all of those things are like on hand, and it's made clear like where your medications are, but also that they can't be just out in plain sight. So while I don't have a boarding barn per se, there are clients that come in and out, and that kind of stuff is everything, is labeled, but with the caveat, like ask Ashley, or ask your barn manager, or ask somebody to double check all that stuff. But I think that then, moving forward, as far as the stuff in the trailer, there's a whole nother kit and caboodle that I keep in the trailer, just to, oftentimes you're not taking every horse from the barn to a show with you. So I leave stuff at home, and then I have stuff in the trailer. And actually, to be honest with you, I just found this year and I'm very excited about it. There's like a medical bag, and it's like sectioned, and like you can buy them on Amazon. They're like medical bags that you zip up, and they're sectioned and they're padded. So like I can put it in my trailer with bottles and medications and stuff, and it's just safe as can be and fits in there nicely. Everything has its own little slot. It's delightful.
I just made a note in my notes. I was like, get the link to the medical bag.
It's so great. It's
because
so awesome.
I know somebody in the group's going to be like, which bag is it? And I'm going to be like, this
I know.
one.
I know. Yeah, I am a little lucky. My husband works for he's a helicopter maintenance helicopter mechanic, and so he works for PHI, which is a like medical flight helicopter. So they sent me the link, so it's great.
You'll have to send it to me, because now I need to know what it is.
Super. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just kind of making sure that as it's organized, it's labeled, because and a lot of times you want to also be aware of like the generic names of drugs as well. So your bottle may not say Banamine, it may say Flunixin, or however you say it, but like that you just need to be aware of. So oftentimes on my list, I'll write the generic names next to the drugs.
That's smart. Yeah, like that's really good advice for anybody, like whether you're running a barn or if it's just your horse in a barn or anything like that. Because I'm going to throw us under the bus for a minute. I'll throw myself under the bus for a minute. A friend so I live on a farm. I only have a couple horses here, but there's a bunch of broodmares and babies. And one of the broodmares that just got here a couple weeks ago, I guess she's prone to choke, and we didn't know that.
Yeah.
So she choked a couple days ago, and I'm calling the owner going, what meds do we give her? Where are the meds? It took me 45 minutes to locate the meds and get the meds.
Yeah.
Because we did not have it set up correctly. We weren't prepared for that. So like her meds weren't in a place where I could easily find them. And that could have been a really bad situation if it was like a really bad, emergency. So that's very legitimate advice for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely have. I have in my meds drawer, like I have kind of little basket that says IM meds, and then the next basket it's IV meds. And so just basically, like, as long as everything is labeled and it's checked, and and then obviously just a good rule of thumb, like once a year, I usually at the end of the year, because I'm packing for Aiken, and then also I've just gone through everything because it's the end of the year, check the expiration dates, and then kind of check all that stuff as well. And then you can check with your vets about expiration dates and things like that, kind of, if you're within 30 days or if you're within 2 years, like they're very different things.
So how do you keep track of like the inventory of what you have, or when you need to reorder if you're out of something?
Yeah, so typically, like, it definitely depends on like the time of year. So going south, and I'm sure you guys know down in Florida, but you'll have horses come down, and like the Florida funk will hit, and you'll have horses skin go nuts, or and it happens in Aiken too. And then also when we come back from going south, we come back to Virginia. There's Virginia clay, so it's like you're on a mud farm, and you go through mud season. So that's super stressful. But they so oftentimes you kind of go through like the seasonal needs. It's no different than humans, honestly. Like you end up going through your seasonal, you're like, we're coming up to spring, so stock up on your Claritin, so it's that has to happen with horses too. So and then you go to CVS and it's all gone. And so you just try to plan ahead a little bit. Like I definitely am aware of what I need. And then for, shipping, like I know that if I'm going to be shipping a lot or going kind of back and forth, I'm aware that, you might end up with horses that might get a bit of a tummy ache or might get something like that. So things I have on hand. The other thing that I used to ship horses. I rode and lived in Vermont, and then would ship horses down to Florida. And so we would kind of do like effectively 6 months and 6 months. And so on that trip, kind of before I left, I would always have like certain drugs kind of up near the front of, the doorway, because obviously you're packed to the gills. So kind of I would have things at the front that if, God forbid, if something happened, that I knew that I would need. So whether it was some mild sedation, or whether it was Banamine, or whether it was, gauze and vet wrap, or wraps, or, an extra halter or something like that. You just, in general, dealing with horses, like we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And so you're every kind of task where I'm dealing with, whether I'm leaving people in charge of my barn and I'm gone for a week, or whether I'm shipping horses up and down the East Coast, you want to prepare for the worst. So again, it's kind of a little bit, anxiety inducing, but still you also, there's got to be some kind of, you just have to be, it's horses. So you have to be, prepared for anything.
Yeah. So, so when you're shipping horses a lot, like I have a question, everybody does stuff different. Like, do you treat with Ulcer Guard? Do you give them electrolytes before and after on their, like, what's your protocol as far as when you're shipping horses, those long distances?
Yeah, so it is definitely different for each horse. Like my horse, Charlie, is, he's a seasoned campaigner. So he's my 3-star horse, and he is a pretty chill dude. And, he's just happy to be with you all the time. He's the biggest Labrador you've ever met. But so he's a lot different than, say my horse Quicksilver, or even the mare Tulip. Like they are a lot more anxiety ridden, and, get very nervous, and don't think that, group activities are always that much fun. So for them, I definitely treat them a little bit differently. There's obviously a ton of supplements available and a ton of things that you can do daily. And for me personally, I use U7, and I'm not even like that. That's not a plug. It's just what I use, and I like it. So I find that really helpful on a daily basis. And then I will provide, like the recommended dose. I obviously talk to my vet, but the recommended dose for, GastroGuard or something like that. And then carry that through the event. And then the other thing too, is that if we were going on like a really long trip, like kind of when I was doing those, trips up and down the East Coast, or, traveling up to like, Bromont or something, you can talk to your vet, and depending on kind of what your horse needs, you can tube them. There's lots of options. So, tubing them before the trip, or, like if giving them electrolyte paste or something a few days prior to make sure they're really drinking. And then, things like just something simple, like hanging, if it's, possible to hang a water bucket in the trailer or something like that. There's a ton of, of products available. But I think in the end, the biggest thing is you just kind of need to find out what your specific horse needs. So, I'm sure that, every horse would love to be on a tube of GastroGuard for, 5 days before every show. And some horses need that, but some horses, can get by with a little bit less, or some horses can get by with, with maybe just a daily supplement. So if you have a horse that is a bit anxious or a bit nervous, or is, when they get a bit, anxious or nervous on the trailer, you kind of want to know what their tendencies are. Some are to paw and just be a general pain in the butt, but some, internalize it, and they won't drink, or they won't eat, or they, tend to get a bit, maybe they get a bit colicky, or, so stuff like that. You just kind of need to know what's best for your horse. But in general, I think being proactive as opposed to reactive is my outlook on a lot of things with horses, which is also why when anyone usually needs any drugs or medication or ointments of any kind, I'm your girl.
I was gonna say, I can
also
imagine.
Amazon's in my house like every day, so there's that.
I could see that too. Yeah. But you're always prepared. Always prepared.
Yeah, I'm like a Boy Scout. It's great.
Okay, so you said you like U7, and I know that you like witch hazel from listening to your hack chat.
Oh my God,
do you have
so much.
any other care products or like fancy secret recipes or like fun stuff like that?
Yeah, things that I won't go without. So as a rider, sticky spray, and then like generally, just like grooming things. So they like those, I guess it's like those fuzzy mitts. I don't even know what it's made out of, but those really like fluffy like sheep mitts.
The sheepskin ones.
Yeah, those. So that's that's a must have. And then witch hazel for sure. Alcohol and baby oil. Sometimes if you like mix that into a spray bottle, that'll helps in the winter. Kind of it helps like if they're a little bit sweaty, but you don't want to hose them off or anything like that. Then it'll help dry out the follicles of the hair, but then the baby oil keeps it from drying out the actual skin. Let's see. Obviously, you can't really go wrong with the magic pink stuff toe conditioner. That's a must-have. And then there's for grooming purposes. There's a ton of the oil sprays and stuff that for like putting in the tails and things. My favorite, honestly, is when you just go to like Walmart or the grocery store, and you just get like the sheen spray from like the hair section. That's one of my top go-tos. And then baby powder. Baby powder for everything. If you're not sure, like if they're getting rubs under their saddle, or if you're, if they are getting rubs on their boots, or and you're going into the arena or anything, like baby powder will just you really can't go wrong with it. You can't. It makes their whites. It makes their witch hazel and baby powder makes their socks white. If you're not exactly 100% clean, just slap that on there.
I definitely don't always wash my horse's one sock. So.
Yeah, just squirt some baby powder on there. You're good to go. Good to go.
Words from a pro. You said I could do it, so.
Yeah, it works. It's awesome. And then they also smell so fresh and so clean.
Yeah, see, that's valid. Okay, so steering it back to kind of like your day-to-day, like I can tell you're super organized, so I have to ask this. What do you find is the best way to structure your day for maximum efficiency?
Yeah, so this is great because so like it's obviously awesome if you have a team of people that can help you. And I bless her, I have one girl that works for me. Her name's Lainey Phillips, and she is awesome, but she's one human. And so I oftentimes will have clients' horses to ride and my horses to ride, and then have a ton of lessons to teach. And it's great, but it's hard to do all of be so hands-on with all the horses and take care of all the horses the way they need to go, everything, and pay attention to everything that, is involved in a program, from paddock maintenance to setting the jump course, to dragging the arena, to, watching horses jog, to talking to the farrier, to riding, to teaching, to, everything else, like bathing them properly, grooming them properly, all that stuff. So if you have a team of people, that's awesome. And I, have people that, some of my students come in and help out part-time and things like that, but delegation is important. But for me, what I do is I have, I'm old school and I have to write everything down. And because if I don't write it down, then it doesn't happen. So I have this awesome planner and I have it all kind of set out, but it's important I think that, for you to go through your day and kind of pay attention to what needs to happen, like first and foremost, as far as the most time consuming activity to the least time consuming activity. And then for me, a lot of my students have to kind of teach, or they need lessons at certain times, whether they're working or whether they're in school. And so, I definitely work around that. But the other big thing too is to pay attention, like when you get, and I say this to my students all the time, like I don't care if you've had the worst day at work, I don't care if you've had the worst day at school, but when you're on the horse, like that's your time. That is your time with your horse. You need to forget about everything else and just ride. And so for me, I have to remember that too, like when I get on certain horses, or when I get on all horses, but certain horses that kind of need a little bit more for me than others, I need to just take a deep breath. And I realize that I've got, maybe 45 minutes to ride this horse, but that 45 minutes from the minute I step foot and put my foot in the stirrup to the minute I sit on the ground, like it's all about that horse. So that's important to do. And then I think as far as like planning everything else in and around it, like it's important to keep communication going, as far as like whether that's just kind of with yourself and checking in on the list of your to-do list, or whether that's touching base with your vet or farrier or chiropractor or something like that to kind of figure out like where everybody is and what's needed on the day. And then I think that structuring it to also kind of figure out what your horse needs as well. Like say you had a really hard ride, or say the day before, and the horse needs to go for a walk, or say, the horse just got chiropracted the day before and you need to, plan into your day, a long walk, or, extra, you're going to need to add some extra time into your warm up. I think that writing it down and kind of backing up from, what needs to be done, like the most time consuming situation is the best. But I think that, also sometimes, you have to focus on what is most important for the horse, so how that's going to end up being, how your day is going to end up feeling most successful for you and the horses that you have to ride, or you and your horse, in order to get out of the ride in the day, what needs to be accomplished. So it's a long-winded answer, but
I like long-winded answers. It's fine. Okay, so you mentioned a planner, like to plan your day. Oh, so how what's your favorite way to keep track of each horse's needs, as far as everything from like feeding and care to like riding schedule? How do you keep track of all that?
Yeah. So once again, I have no actual affiliation to this, but I'm going to plug it anyway because everyone needs to know about it. It's called plum paper. So I don't know if other people know about this, but I found out about this, like basically you can go in at plumpaper.com, you go in and you can design your own planner. So like for me, I have list of, it's like broken down into weeks. So I have like the calendar where you list all the shows, and then each page each 2 pages has a week on it, and it's like broken down into horses, which has like 10 slots, and then you just write really small to fit them all in. So horses, and then I have lessons, a block for lessons underneath that, and then underneath that I have medications, and then underneath that I have notes. So and then the biggest thing in the barn is that when I write down in the planner sits out in the barn, and when I write down the planner medications, like people have to initial next to the horses the medications that were done. So whether I do it or whether one of my girls do it, like you have to initial next to it, AM and PM, like who did what. And then also like usually, little things like if there's a horse that I need to pay attention to the temperature or something, if I, the girls will write down the temperature next to the horse's name for AM and PM and stuff like that. Which that is a good habit to get into. As a side note, that's a good habit to get into as far as shipping, especially kind of with there's so many things going on. Know your horse's range of temperature, and always keep a newer thermometer, within reach. I have one in like every orifice of my barn, so. But then It's
I'm
true.
not gonna say it.
Um,
I'm not gonna say
it. So in the planner, it's kind of I'm able to write down like what their what their competition schedule is, what they do each day, and then also like under the notes, say Charlie, like Charlie's left front was puffy, or fungus on his right hind, or something like that. And it's really good to write things down, because I can look back, and I have planners from years ago. And so, if I'm like, oh, this horse is kind of like this other horse I used to ride, I'll go back and look and kind of see what I did leading up to a big competition, with that horse, to jog some memories as far as kind of what needed to happen and what didn't need to happen, and what was good and what wasn't good. But also, that helps kind of, say like you put a horse on SMZs, and then, 2 weeks later you're going to start SMZs again. Well, it was just on SMZs, so maybe I should talk to my vet about something else. And you can, kind of have a little bit more of an actual, concrete, point of reference.
That's really smart, because it helps you see patterns over time that you
Correct.
might otherwise forget even happened. So
yeah, and then obviously, and then too, like, I mean, for the most part, I ride all of my horses, but if someone else rode the horse, in like larger barns that I've worked in, our names will be next to the horse, the activity that they did and stuff like that, just so that, you can go back and talk to that person if something's a little funny or whatever.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like mentally writing down things. I've already typed some things or notes for myself.
It's so great. And it's just, I've been lucky enough to work in a lot of upper level barns, and for a lot of different personalities and different people that have, some super organized people, some not so organized people, some fly by the seat of your pants people, some very detail oriented people, like rule followers. And so it's great to kind of take it all in and put it into my barn. And it's fun to kind of be like, oh yeah, I remember like this situation happened and this is how we handle it. And then, I write it down, and it's able to, help me or not help me, but either way, it's something that's documented that I can go back and use as a resource again.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your leg care routine day to day and at shows?
So this is something, this is like very, so the hardest thing is that you have to figure out like what your horses like can handle. Like I have one mare in my barn that is so sensitive. Like you look at her and her legs will blow up. So you have to be like, we have to be very aware of what's going on. And that goes even for like, I know we're not in clipping season really anymore, but for clipping as well, like I love things to look pretty and organized and everything to be the way that it needs to be. But if a horse needs to have some hair pants left on, like leave the hair pants on. Like let's not anger the legs. Let's make, like, if they like hair pants, leave them on. So like I know that it looks like you might be riding a Thelwell pony or a cart horse, but if their legs aren't inflamed, then everyone's happy. So you just need to know your horse, but in general, you cannot go wrong with like ice. So after every jump school, I will, and even for like, honestly, even for like my lower level horses, so training and below, my rule of thumb is usually like some kind of ice straps. And again, I'm not affiliated with them, but I use the professional choice ice straps. I'll put those on. You do have to readjust them like after like 10 minutes. But I will do that. And then typically then they'll get Sore No More or some kind of liniment, whatever your liniment of choice. I find Sore No More to be pretty good. Also Back on Track makes a really good liniment as well. I find that to be good because it's not super aggressive on the skin. Most horses can tolerate it. And it also is really good under standing wraps. So if they're going to be standing in, then I'll wrap them. And then for usually my training horses and above, like if they've competed or gone cross country, I will stand them in ice. So some horses are a little funny about it, and you have to put like the ice wraps or like those zip up boots. But I try and teach horses to stand in ice, and I'll do after a competition. So after they run cross country, they'll stand in the ice boots for 30 minutes on, like usually at least an hour and a half off. And I usually do at least 2 icings. And then I will, if the horse will tolerate it, I will usually do poultice, but a basic kind, just to not worry about the skin. And then if they come home and then put wraps on top, and if they come home and get turned out, I'll just take the wraps off. And some people are comfortable with turning out wraps. It's not my thing, but some people do it. I'll take the wraps off and leave just the poultice and paper on and turn out with that. So then in the morning, it's like a little surprise. You see paper all over your field, so you have to go collect that. But the biggest thing is just icing. That's kind of my I worked for Kim in my formative years when I was very young, and after every jump school we iced. After every gallop we iced, and then multiple times on competition times. So that's my you can't go wrong with it. Like it literally will not hurt ever. So
yeah. Okay, so you mentioned some of the meds that you have in the trailer, but I can only imagine that you packing for a horse show, since you sound super organized. What does this look like when you're packing the trailer for a horse show?
Oh my gosh. In what way? Like just
what are you packing? What's your method? What's your thought behind it? What do you pack for certain things versus other things?
Yeah, so like obviously you're set up for an away show, or you're set up for a 1 day show is different. But I think that for me, I love just to make sure, like I want to have enough wraps on hand that if I'm staying overnight, that I don't reuse the wraps too many times. Especially like oftentimes if you're in tent stabling and they don't have mats down or something like that, the horses, like this past weekend at Carolina, my little mare like dug to China, and so I had to refill her hole with more dirt. So her stall was the mess, and so when I wrapped her, I wanted to make sure that I was using fresh wraps, just so that there wasn't something in there. So enough wraps I think is good. And then let's see, in general, I think that making sure the shampoos that you use are pretty consistent. Like that's in general the biggest rule that I have for shows and home. Like you're not going to use anything in a show that you don't use at home. Like it needs to stay consistent. And so you're not going to break out some fancy schmancy, shampoo that has all these like essences of everything in it at a show, and your horse, is allergic to 12 of the essences. So that's where it's nice to have nice things at shows, but at the same time you want to keep it consistent. So for me, like typical Dawn shampoo and Head and Shoulders. The sprays you want to keep consistent, so I'll always have the witch hazel, obviously quick braid, and my coat conditioner and things like that. And then like for me, because all of my horses like really hate flies, so I'll if I'm going to do like quarter markers and stuff, I'll just use fly spray for that. So kind of kills two birds with one stone. But then if as a side note, actually, just with washing of blankets, and say you have a lot of like show sheets or cool coats or stable blankets, again, make sure that you're keeping an eye on that detergent. I just use anything that's like free and clear, just nothing that's going to have, that could be any kind of, nothing with scents, nothing that could be of any kind of a, aggravating source for horses. So let's see, so that kind of stuff. And then typically, I want to make sure that I have like like any kind of triple antibiotic, like things for like random, like cuts and bruises, like things happen. So they can step on their heels in the trailer. They could, or they could knock themselves on cross country or something like that. So you want to just be prepared for that. So hoof packing materials, things to help with kind of like little nicks and scrapes and bruises, betadine wash, to help clean that out. Clear eyes, like saline solution is good for both their eyes and cuts. So, just anything that kind of can help like minimize, help minimize a problem, and kind of get you until you can see, if you need help, get you until you can see a vet or someone.
So do you have like a kit? Do you have a kit of a lot of the stuff that you just keep in your trailer?
Yep. So like hoof packing, diapers, vet wrap, duct tape, all of that stuff is kind of in a container. And then I have obviously like, I use, with the poultice, I use, like shop towels. So I have a couple of rolls of that in the trailer. I do keep a set of like emergency wraps. So like, from when I was in Pony Club, my old school, like quilts and stuff like that. And then obviously also, like shoe pullers, nail pullers, things like that to help if that needs to be done. And then I do keep, your general medication. So Banamine, SMZs, some like light sedatives, and then stuff for skin. So like Dex, Noclazone, stuff like that. Just things that are pretty handy and generic. And so all that stuff does live in the trailer. Now you're supposed to pay attention to like, extremes as far as temperature goes with your medications. I should be better about it, but you're supposed to. So, PSA.
Yeah. We've got a couple questions. So Pam asks, do you use Nobos, pillow wraps, or quilted wraps, and why?
Yeah, so typically, okay, this is actually a very good question. And it might just be like a me thing, but I don't like the big fluffy like pillow wraps that are like stitched really heavily touching one another, because I just don't like, I don't think that you should, like, if you have on, say you have on like an Under Armour shirt and the seam is really heavy and it goes off your arm, you take it off and like you see the seam. And so I don't know if this is actually true, but if it does it to my arm, it's probably gonna do it to their leg. So I actually really like the Back on Track wraps, and I like those wraps because, or I will use the Nobos because the stitching goes horizontal instead of vertical. And typically I will check my wraps. I'll go through everything about once a year. So I actually I just bought a bunch because I threw out a bunch. You want to make sure like that they're not like, they shouldn't be lumpy. Like it should be very smooth. The stitching shouldn't be coming undone. It shouldn't be kind of it should be very universal in the in the wrap itself. And I like the Back on Tracks because they are very consistent. I will say that sometimes in the summer, because of the actual product, it can get a little bit hot for the horses. So I'll go to Nobos in that sense. And then they just, you want to make sure that nothing gets too thin. So after a number of washes, I like the Back on Tracks because they do kind of hold their integrity a bit, which is reassuring. They also, you just want to watch and make sure that, after you wash and dry, they, don't get, again, you want it to be a uniform feeling across. So That's my own personal opinion.
Pam also asked, what's your preference for hoof packing?
Yeah, so this is actually another good question because, again, some horses are really funny about hoof packing. I've always done like the oh my gosh, the name is just escaping me. But the really sticky stuff that you just put in the feet.
Magic cushion?
Magic cushion, there you go. I've always done that, but you shouldn't use that much, but two, if you use too much and it comes out the back of, like, say it comes out the heels or something, it can blister. Like, I've had it blister horses before. So some horses are a little bit funny about that. There's this, again, the name is escaping me. There's this stuff that honestly they sell everywhere and it's not that expensive. It's comes in like a it's a red and white label. That is there's something, it's another type of kind of the sticky pack that that helps, that isn't always as irritating. But honestly, to be honest, if I was going to pack horse's foot, I usually just go with if for bruising, I'll just go with Epsom salts and betadine and make like a paste. So it's a little bit old school, but it works. And then I'll do iodine or betadine, depending on what I'm looking for. The other really good stuff is the Epsom salt green jelly that Tractor Supply sells. That's where I get it from, or Amazon. That is really good for bruising and doesn't irritate as much, which is nice. My horses, as just a preference, most of my horses go in pads, so I don't have to worry about that as much. Usually when I'm packing a horse's foot, it's, you know, for an abscess or for a bruise or something like that. So depending on what you're looking for, like if the horse is footsore, I tend to use some kind of like magic cushion or like that sticky kind of sticky hoof packing. If there is a legitimate bruise or abscess, then I'll go to something more like Epsom salts and betadine or the green Epsom salts jelly that you squeeze out. All of that stuff is very good. But
so she had a follow-up. She said, I also use magic cushion. She said, I also use magic cushion. So how do you wrap it to actually keep it in?
Yeah. Okay. So here's a trick. And you can put Vaseline. You can put Vaseline like on their heel bolt, on the bolts of their heels, and then up the back of the pastern, and that kind of helps all from, if it does come out from, getting stuck to the hair or to the leg. To get it off, you use alcohol. If there is any there, just use straight alcohol and rub it off. But what I do is if you put it, if you wrap the foot, now some people say that like if they have the shoe on, like I'll just put it in the shoe, and you just use basically use like a quarter of what you think. So like I'll, just because when they step down, they'll squish it out. So I'll put it mainly on the toe or like kind of around the frog, so that when they step down, it's not going to go everywhere. So I will, if it's just with the shoe on, oftentimes like I'll just put it in and then let them put their foot down, and then the shavings will stick to it. If you're wrapping their foot with it, put it at the toe, and then just on the side of, like, right in the crease kind of their frog and the foot, but don't put it up on the side. Like, don't put it up kind of under their heels unless you have a specific area that you need to pack for some reason, because it'll squish out, and then it'll cover all those areas. If you put it too much or on the frog or too high, then it just goes everywhere. It's a mess.
Gotcha. So I keep having to mute myself because there's like a Florida man fiesta like happening. I don't know. There's gunshots and like I don't know what's going on out here.
The authentic experience.
It is a real Florida experience. There's lots of bass and gunshots. Sorry. If anyone's hearing that in the background, I'm very sorry. Okay. All right. I think I've only got like one more question. So you seem super organized, so I have to ask you this. My trainer is also very organized, and she has a blanket room, unlike anything I've ever seen in my life, which she's very happy to show you. She's like, come in here. And it's just shelves, and they're organized by like weight and size.
Yeah.
And like, I have to know, what does yours look like? Because it's got to be similar, right?
Oh, well, I wish I would love that. I just have this like blanket corner, and it is a like a little bit. I have a little bit of anxiety moving forward with summer because I don't know how to organize the fly sheets yet, and they just because they get so gross, and you don't want to fold them up and leave them out. So anyway, I'll have to get back to you on that. But for the winter, I have this blanket corner, and basically, um, everything my one of my girls is very good at folding blankets, and it makes me very happy when she folds them, but you have to fold them in a certain way. Like you can't, it drives me nuts when there's straps out, like you don't go down the road in your car with like your clothes hanging out the side. Like your straps should not be outside your blanket, like lock it up. So you've got like the way that they're folded is like you fold them in thirds, and then you fold it in another third, and you always want to make sure that like the straps are tucked into the side and everything is underneath. So all you see is this nice little round bubble on the outside. But I have it because, again, my general rule is that if someone comes into my barn, like you need to know, like you need to be able to put, to match up everything. So I have it per horse. So I have each horse has their own shelf. And then I have a trunk that has extra blankets in it. So for just things that I have. So if somebody needs something, or if something's broken, or if, Fluffy ruined something, then Fluffy can borrow one. So so that's how that goes. And then yeah, and the same with like the supplements and the feeds in the tack room. Like everything is labeled, and everything has to be like, my horse's stuff is on the top, and then the next horse is on the next shelf. And so we do, and obviously smart packs help with a lot of that stuff, but I end up
I was about to say, like, I have to ask now about your feed room, because now I feel like
yeah, well, I have so, we have so many horses and horses that come in training for short periods of time. I don't actually use, I probably should, but I buy a lot of things in smart packs, but I don't have it set up for that. So, because horses that kind of come in, I am like, oh, well, this horse feels like it could benefit from this supplement, or let's try this, or let's try that. So everything is kind of in bulk, but it's all labeled. So, and then you also, have horses that we've had a couple that are prone to tie up. So they have to have their own organization. And in addition to the feed chart, we have a board that's just listed with like medications or notes about the horses. So if somebody specifically has to have their feed wet, or specifically has to have their hay wet, or something like that, then it's all documented.
Yeah, but so that seems to be the theme here. Write everything down.
Write everything down.
Have it organized. Yeah, I mean, overall, like I think the best advice overall that you keep saying is anybody could walk in and be able to find everything and know what each horse gets. Like that's solid advice for anybody, whether you have horses at home, or a trainer with a program, or just a person at a boarding barn. Like that's solid across the board.
So. Yeah. I mean, it is very helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, like I think that our job is to kind of pay attention to what our job as riders and trainers of any capacity is to kind of pay attention to what is happening with each horse. And so that's my whole shtick too, is like one size doesn't fit all, and that goes for teaching and for horse care. Like I like when I first kind of start teaching someone, you want to pay attention to kind of what each person is resonating with. So whether it's a phrase that really makes sense to them, or whether it's a style, or whether it's me changing my voice, or like changing the inflection, or just staying calm, like all of those things are important. And it's the same with horses. So like some horses you can be a little bit louder on, and some horses you can be a little bit quieter too. And I think that that's the same for their management. Like some horses need a little bit more, and some horses need a little bit less. And it's our job to kind of pay attention to that. And for me, with dealing with, being hands-on in all aspects. So I don't just have my competition horses. Like, to me, a little bit, I want to help take care of all of my students' horses. So, when you're talking to someone about, about their horse, but it's like one of 40 in your brain, you've got to kind of, want to make sure that you pay attention to that and don't give the wrong advice.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, wow, it's somehow already been an hour. That was really easy, but also really beneficial. Like, I have a lot of things to take from this. Also, I'm going to have to bug you for Amazon links.
Oh, yeah. And I tell you, this plum paper play, I know we're already kind of into 2023, but listen, it'll change your life. I should reach out to them.
Seriously, you could have like your saddle pad, you could have their logo and stuff.
My vet actually uses it. She saw my planner in my barn and has like 3. And I caught her the other day. I was like, look at that plum paper. Is that a plum paper planner? She goes, yeah, I got it from you. I said, well, you're welcome. Glad I could help.
Great. Well, now next week I'll be talking all about my plum paper addiction. Just kidding.
I know. And you can get this. I know we need to go, but you can get these like little inspirational quotes on the top and or like on the front. You can like pick it all. And I know. And so I just was like trying to be a little bit more lighthearted. So mine just says, all right, stop, collaborate, and listen.
Oh my God. Man. It'll take me like a month just to come up with the right quote to put across the top, though.
It's so great. It's so wonderful.
A lot of responsibility.
Really commit to the whole year at that point. So
yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm literally going to log off of this and go look at what you're saying. I have to see this now. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know it's going to be helpful for other people if it was super helpful for me. So I'm a little intimidated by your level of organization. So
oh no, it's great. It's intimidating to me as well, but that's okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Again.
Yeah, hopefully everybody had a good time, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again soon. We'll come up with more for you to talk to us about because you're really easy to talk to. So you're fantastic.
I have a lot to say about a lot of random things, so let's go for it.
Perfect. Maybe we can do like a Ashley Says Random Things episode.
No, we might not be able to do that.
We'll see. I'll talk to Justin and Kinsey. Yeah.